Now, I'm not sure if any of you had the pleasure of watching Question Time in Parliament yesterday. It sadly is one of the things that I like to do of an afternoon. And the topic of discussion, of course, was net zero emissions and the issues that are going on between the coalition at the moment. Now, the Farmers Federation has come out to say that I think most farmers now are just very pragmatic about this. We haven't drunk any cordial. We're not lefties or righties or whatever. We're at the front end of rapidly changing climate. We're experiencing that ourselves in the last decade with a terrible drought and some extreme weather conditions. We're at the pointy end of this when it comes to international policies, and clearly climate change is something the global community is taking very seriously. They have also asked for targets. They want to know what is going on. So why are the National Party not hearing that? Joining me on the line now is Senator Hollie Hughes, who spent some of her life in rural New South Wales, in Moree in particular, and she joins me on the line now. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Tracy.
Look, regional Liberals are making the case for the Nationals to back the target of net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and have expressed some, frustrations and concerns about the junior coalition partner. You've got something like 24 seats that look after rural and regional Australia. Surely you've got a voice as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's around 51 seats that are classed as rural and regional seats in the federal parliament, and the Liberal Party represents 24 of those in the House of Representatives, and the National Party represents 16 of those. So the voice of those rural and regional Liberals is very, very important. And if you look at someone like Rowan Ramsey in South Australia, his seat of Grey actually covers around 90% of the South Australian landmass. So Melissa Price with Durack in WA, also massive landmass, and some really important industries in their areas. Obviously the Pilbara and the top of WA, there's a lot of mining. With Rowan Ramsey's seat in Grey, he encompasses Whyalla, and there's aluminium smelter there. So, they are definitely voices that need to be listened to and respected in this debate.
Now, you spent some time in Moree, so you're no stranger. Of course, you're back in Sydney now, but you're no stranger to rural and regional Australia. They're not. What I'm sick of hearing is, from the Nationals, that it is the latte-sipping Sydney-sider who wants net zero emissions. That is totally underestimating and questioning the intelligence of regional Australians, as far as I'm concerned.
Look, and certainly in the agriculture sector, and if we look at the agriculture sector, they are at the forefront of where we can reduce emissions. So there seems to be a little bit of confusion with some people through this debate. Net zero does not mean zero emissions. It means that we effectively offset them, and we are looking at how we can do that through a very strong technology portfolio. Now, part of that includes carbon capture storage. It also includes soil sequestration, and we're seeing lots of developments with regards to soil sequestration of carbon, because that is actually beneficial for the soil. So there's things that farmers can do that contribute to the reduction of emissions, but they also, a lot of them, and when you go out to Moree, it's obviously a very big broadacre farming area, and paddock management, but also looking at how they're replanting native vegetation into areas, which is again boosting the environment that they rely on for their income, but contributes to carbon capture and allowing those emissions to be seen to be reducing or actually reducing.
The thing I find quite confusing in this whole thing, Hollie, is we have been through a decade of drought. We are now seeing tornadoes in our country. We're seeing tornado warnings in Sydney. Something has got to be done, and the people at the forefront of this are certainly National and country Liberal members. Why do you think there is such a pushback from the Nationals?
The pushback that we certainly seem to hear most vocally is around coal and the mining of coal. I think when we look at, obviously areas like the Hunter, but areas in far north Queensland, coal is going to continue to play a significant role for a very long time into the future. About 40% of Australia's emissions actually comes from our export products. products. So we have made significant reductions in our emissions. The only other two countries that are comparable when it comes to emissions being related to exports are Canada and New Zealand. And we are in a significantly better place than either of them for the emissions that we have already reduced. And we've continued to do this through investing in technology. I've spent, as you know, a lot of time up in the Hunter, and we've been doing a lot of work around hydrogen and trying to create a real hydrogen hub around Newcastle. There's one organisation that's looking at reviving, if you like, one of the former dirty coal power stations that's closed at the moment, but reviving that and revitalising it into a hydrogen hub and utilising old and discarded timber products. So there are movements within even the Hunter region for some new forms of energy. We see the University of Newcastle within it, they are literally printing solar panels. I mean, it is just an extraordinary thing to go and see how these solar panels are being printed. And if we want to talk about inner city, we know those solar panels are now being used in a lot of council projects in areas like North Sydney, where they've built new parks and walkways, that they've utilised these solar panels that are being printed onto covered walkways that are generating the power to put the lights on around the park. So, you know, we are seeing an evolution when it comes to energy creation through renewables. Renewables are in no way, though, and I please don't want anyone to misconstrue this, renewables are not at the stage yet that we can provide reliable, affordable baseload power for heavy manufacturing for aluminium smelters like McKelligott. So they will continue to rely for a substantial period of time on coal-generated baseload power. But technology is evolving, things will change, and to assume that not only the mining companies but the big energy users aren't already looking to the future would be ignorant, because these companies, these businesses have been looking to how their businesses can evolve for a substantial period of time. What we're saying is that this isn't just Australia, it's a global marketplace. So, and I heard Fiona Simpson from National Farmers yesterday, there are more people and more businesses and more industries aware that their customers overseas are looking to how they are reducing emissions, and that is driving their purchasing decisions. So what we're seeing with this drive towards net zero by 2050 is very much market-driven. The Morrison government's committed around $20 billion to projects that will continue to drive technology and investment into alternate energy creation and also storage. But what that's leading to is around $80 billion plus of market investment. So whilst we're putting in $20 billion, that's encouraging and giving the market confidence to continue to invest and grow in it themselves. Up in the Hunter, they're building the world first, certainly Australia's first lithium-ion battery storage factory. And when we look at these lithium-ion battery storage, and again, we've got to think about it in two ways. There's the power that we use to generate our homes, our small businesses, keep the lights on, keep the fridge on, you know, make sure we can charge our mobile phones. But then there are the big energy users like McKelligott Smelter and other major manufacturing organisations. So there are two streams when we're considering this, and that's why the importance of affordable and reliable baseload power will be there for quite a while to come, and that will obviously be driven by coal. The other side of the coal market is both Gladstone and Hunter have incredibly high-quality thermal coal going out of their ports. Now, this is heading to a lot of countries who aren't as developed as Australia. We live in an amazing country with all, the trimmings, if you like, that we have access to. There are countries that are still developing that need access to our coal to ensure that they can continue to grow and provide better opportunities and lifestyles and life outcomes for their citizens. So coal will be playing a role long into the future, in particular through that export market.
You're with Tracy Mack on Newcastle Live Radio. I'm talking with Senator Hollie Hughes. Hollie, it really is thinking laterally, isn't it? I mean, we have the middle of Australia, which is pure desert, hot as hell, solar farms out in the middle of Australia. We've just got to start thinking a little bit laterally on all of this.
There is that element. One of the problems with renewable is the transmission side of it and how much is lost in the transmission. So there are issues when you sort of think about putting a solar farm in the Simpson Desert and then expecting that you can use that power in Sydney or Brisbane. That's, obviously going to be problematic. But we're now seeing the highest uptake in the world of solar panels on people's homes. And this has happened over the sort of past decade, if you like, because solar panels have reached a price point. They've hit the tipping point where they are affordable. And this is what happens with technology. As it's new and developing, there's obviously a significant cost to it, but it does over time move to a point where you see the tipping point into real affordable energy that can be utilised. So there are things that we're still developing. Hydrogen's obviously one of them. But hydrogen also is something that's looking to be used in heavy vehicle transportation. There's a bus company on the Central Coast within Newcastle that's already moving some of its buses in this direction. So, when you're moving them from diesel to hydrogen, you're obviously contributing to significant reductions in emissions. So it's not about a carbon tax. No, we are absolutely focused that we will not be taxing anybody. And this is the problem when also you look at what's the difference between a target and legislating. When you start legislating, you start providing fundamentally a blank check because you're needing to keep investing and investing and investing to get to a certain point, whereas where you set a target and you encourage the market to work towards it, support the market, it won't happen in a straight line. And I think this is where it requires a little bit of intellectual discussion and debate that, again, we went to the election, last election, with a 28% target for 2030 from our 2005 emissions. Now, we're going to exceed that. The Labor Party went with a 45% reduction. Now, the only way they were going to ever get to that was with significant new taxation. So I personally think 2030 is... It's a false claim because that's 9 years away versus 29 years away. And when you look at all the iPhones we've got now, walking around with our iPads, we never had that 20 years ago. So technology evolved in a way that, we can't even imagine where we're going to be.
Absolutely.
Who would have thought we walked around with our lives on a phone,
Yeah, our entire life. Do you think that we will have an answer before the Prime Minister heads to Glasgow from the Nationals?
Look, in my view, I think we will. I don't know what the Nationals are going to decide upon. I'm starting to feel cautiously optimistic that the majority of the Nats are starting to move towards this. I think there are obviously a couple of Nats who are very vocal in their opposition and concern.
One sits in the same chamber as you?
A couple of them sit in the same chamber as me. But in fact, I would suggest the two that sit in the same chamber as me are the two most vocal. I think Barnaby's language has certainly tempered. If you look at former leader Michael McCormack, Darren Chester, they are certainly in that sphere of moving towards net zero 2050 and support the technology approach that we're adopting. So I would be cautiously optimistic and hopeful that we'll have a resolution by the end of this week. So definitely before the Prime Minister leaves.
That's great news. Look, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I know you're very busy, and I just wanted to touch base and see what the feeling is on the ground, and fingers crossed that we do have something positive out of the Nats very, very soon.
Yeah, but I just would like to say that one of our focus is on jobs creation and how we recognise as these areas transition over 30 years and there are movements, we are very focused on moving that job opportunities into alternate areas to make sure people are supported. But again, no one who currently works in a coal mine should in any way be under any illusion or feeling any stress that this is going to be turned off anytime soon. So please don't listen to the scare campaigns. No one is looking to turn coal off quickly. certainly from the coalition side, and that job security will be there for a long time to come.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
No problem, Tracy. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Stay safe. That is Senator Hollie Hughes joining me live from Canberra, and fingers crossed we will have an answer from the Nationals very, very soon.